You probably didn't notice it. It was too small. That one moment, the slight glance your colleague gave during the meeting, the offhand comment from a friend that lingered a little longer than expected, the notification ping you didn't have the energy to check. These aren't the kinds of things we label as stress, but they build, they stay, they stack quietly in the corners of your mind until, without warning, they tip something over. Welcome to the world of microstress, the invisible force silently shaping how you feel, how you work, and how you connect with others. This isn't about dramatic events or major life changes. It's about the tiny, daily frictions that sleek past your defenses. They don't cause you to panic. They don't even raise your heartbeat. But they accumulate, like grains of sand, until they form a landslide. What makes microstress so dangerous is its subtlety. Traditional stress hits like a wave. Microstress drips in like a leaky faucet. You adapt, you ignore, you normalize. But over time, the cumulative weight begins to affect your relationships, your energy, your ability to think clearly. Unlike stress that demands immediate attention, microstress wears a disguise. It looks like responsibility, like care, like dedication. And often, it comes from the people you care about the most. A partner needing emotional labor, a boss who over-relies on you, a friend who offloads their anxieties without asking how you're doing. You don't notice it right away because it feels like life, but it's life slowly burning through your emotional reserves. In the early hours of the morning or late at night, when everything is quiet, that's when you feel it. The heaviness that doesn't have a name, the weariness that seems unearned. You wonder why you're exhausted when nothing bad has happened. You question your own resilience. But it's not you. It's the 1,000 tiny cuts you didn't see coming. Microstress is the background noise of a life constantly in motion. It's the mental bandwidth consumed by unresolved tension, low-grade conflict, and invisible obligations. The modern world has taught us to cope with big stress, but it never warned us about the small things that steal our peace in slow motion. You don't have to have a traumatic life to feel broken. Sometimes all it takes is too many days of being too available to everyone else and not enough for yourself. Sometimes burnout doesn't come from major failures, but from the constant effort of keeping everything from falling apart. And that's the trap. Because on paper, things look fine. You're functioning, you're performing, you're surviving, but inside, you're running a marathon without shoes, and no one claps for invisible pain. So you keep pushing, unaware that what's draining you isn't a flood, it's a drip. The people who experience the worst effects of microstress are often the most dependable, the caregivers, the team players, the friends everyone turns to. And because they don't complain, no one knows they're hurting. This script is for them, for you, for the ones who are tired but can't explain why. We're going to uncover the hidden architecture of microstress, where it hides, how it disguises itself, and more importantly, how to reclaim control before it becomes too much. You'll start seeing it everywhere, in texts, in tasks, in tone. But don't worry, awareness is the first step to freedom, and you're not alone anymore.
Now that you've seen what microstress looks like, you start noticing the patterns. It's not the single email that throws you off, it's the dozens that assume you'll always say yes. It's not one conversation, it's the slow erosion of your mental space by tiny interruptions you never had time to process. You begin to realize that these moments don't just inconvenience you, they chip away at your identity. You used to have boundaries. Now, you have responsibilities stacked on top of obligations, topped with silent expectations. No one asked for this directly. They just leaned in, and you didn't lean away. That's how it always starts. Microstress doesn't barge in, it seeps in. There's something deeply unsettling about realizing your energy is being drained by things you can't name, and even more unsettling when some of those things come from the people you love. a colleague who constantly shares their stress, a friend who only calls when they're in crisis, a partner who relies on you for emotional regulation. You want to help, you care, but over time, caring becomes a full-time job you didn't apply for, and the salary is fatigue. These aren't bad people. These are good people unintentionally causing harm. That's the terrifying beauty of microstress. It lives in the space between intention and impact. The body keeps score, even if your mind doesn't. You feel tension in your shoulders, you forget small things more often, you scroll instead of sleeping. You feel overwhelmed by the idea of doing absolutely nothing, and somehow also by doing anything at all. These are not random symptoms, they're signals. Your nervous system is being pulled in too many directions, too frequently, with too little recovery. Microstress isn't about trauma. It's about the absence of peace. It's about being on all the time, not in an emergency, just in a state of constant low-grade readiness, like a computer that never shuts down, only dims the screen. Eventually, something burns out. One of the most difficult realizations is that microstress thrives in silence. You don't talk about it because it sounds like complaining. How do you explain that your mental load isn't caused by anything obvious, but everything subtle? That you're not overwhelmed by a major event, just overwhelmed by life's operating system? People might not understand, so you hold it. You tell yourself you're just tired, that you'll catch up on rest this weekend, that next month will be easier, but the truth is, microstress doesn't wait. It compounds. Every unresolved interaction, every unspoken irritation, every expectation you quietly agreed to, they collect interest. And you pay the price in mood, in motivation, in meaning. But here's the turning point. You can interrupt the pattern. Not with a grand gesture, not with a vacation or a breakdown, but with awareness, with small, intentional choices to reclaim space, mental, emotional, and physical. Start by naming it. When something feels off, ask yourself, was that a microstress? When you feel that flicker of irritation or that weight that doesn't belong to you, pause. Don't dismiss it, don't override it, just see it. Awareness is your first act of resistance, because once you name something, you can begin to unhook from it. And don't underestimate the power of shared language. The moment you explain microstress to someone else, you're not just venting, you're building clarity. You're helping them see what they've been feeling but couldn't articulate. This isn't just a personal journey, it's a cultural shift. The more we talk about microstress, the less power it has to isolate us. Naming it doesn't make you weak, it makes you awake. And from there, you can begin to choose differently.
Once you begin noticing microstress, you start recognizing its architecture, where it hides, how it stacks, and the patterns it follows. One of the most common sources is what the authors call interpersonal load. These are the pressures that stem from our relationships, not necessarily toxic ones, but the daily invisible strain of managing emotional energy. You're constantly reading signals, anticipating reactions, softening your words to avoid offense, adjusting your tone to match someone else's mood. This isn't manipulation, it's connection. But over time, constant modulation becomes a performance, and performances are exhausting. Think about how often you brace before answering a call, how often you rehearse a text before sending it, how frequently you feel tension not because someone said something wrong, but because you feel responsible for their response. Microstress thrives in that gray space between caring and caretaking. You're being a good friend, a good employee, a good partner, but your emotional bandwidth is being spent in 1,000 unnoticed ways. And like any limited resource, once it's gone, you feel empty, but can't explain why. Work is another playground for microstress, not just in the obvious deadlines and meetings, but in the small, invisible disruptions that chip away at your flow. Being looped into emails that don't concern you, having to chase down unclear instructions,
navigating office politics, social cues, ambiguous feedback. It's not that any of it is overwhelming on its own. That's the trap. Microstress never comes loudly. It arrives as a whisper, a nudge, a minor detour repeated constantly until your energy is gone, but your calendar looks normal. Even your own ambitions can become a source of microstress. That quiet voice reminding you of what you haven't done yet, the constant pressure to improve, grow, optimize. It feels productive, even noble. But when every quiet moment is filled with inner critique, you never truly rest. You're always chasing something, a future version of yourself who is more organized, more successful, more together. You forget that peace doesn't live in achievement. It lives in presence. But microstress keeps pulling your focus just far enough away that the present always feels insufficient. And then there's the hidden layer, second-hand microstress, the way you absorb tension from others without realizing it. A coworker vents, and you carry their worry. A friend's anxiety becomes your concern. You're emotionally intelligent, which means you're emotionally available. But availability without boundaries leads to depletion. You become the emotional sponge for your environment. And over time, you're soaked full of everyone else's stress, but disconnected from your own needs. This is why microstress is so dangerous. It's invisible. It masquerades as normal life. It teaches you to tolerate discomfort because there's no single moment that screams, "This is too much." It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. And the worst part is, you think it's your fault for not being tougher. But strength isn't about absorbing more. It's about noticing sooner, interrupting earlier, saying no when the yes will cost too much. Small shifts create powerful ripple effects. Declining one unnecessary meeting, turning off notifications, pausing before absorbing someone else's urgency. Asking yourself, is this mine to carry? These are not acts of rebellion, they're acts of restoration. You're not withdrawing, you're reclaiming. Every time you recognize a microstress and choose not to let it root in your body, you are undoing a pattern. You're making room for clarity, for energy, for joy.
As your awareness grows, so does your ability to reclaim control. Microstress doesn't vanish overnight. It's woven into modern life. But you start noticing it sooner, reacting to it differently, and reducing its grip. One powerful realization is this: not all microstress is yours to fix. You've been conditioned to carry, to solve, to smooth, to respond. But that conditioning can be unlearned. And when you unlearn it, you begin to build space between what happens and how you react. That space is where peace lives. One of the most liberating tools the authors offer is the concept of buffering. Not buffering as in numbing or ignoring, but buffering as in protecting your inner state before engaging with stress. This could be as simple as pausing for a few deep breaths before reading a stressful message, or creating a 5-minute ritual between work and home to reset your nervous system. These small buffers act like insulation. They don't erase the friction, but they keep it from getting under your skin. Connection, real nourishing connection, is another antidote to microstress. But not the surface-level kind filled with notifications and updates. The authors urge you to cultivate high-quality interactions. The kind that remind you who you are when everything else is chaotic. The kind that restore your sense of meaning, humor, and calm. Studies show that even brief moments of genuine connection can reset your entire mood. And yet, we often sacrifice these moments in favor of checking one more task off the list. That's the irony of microstress. It tricks us into chasing productivity while quietly draining our capacity to enjoy what we've built. Microstress also lives in broken routines, in the little ways your day veers off course and never quite recovers. A delayed train, a sudden change in plans, a task that takes longer than expected. These aren't major disruptions, but they throw off your internal rhythm. You feel behind, even when you're not. You rush through lunch. You skip the workout. You cancel the call you were looking forward to.
And suddenly, your day feels like it happened to you, not because of a crisis, but because of 10 tiny interruptions that added up. Reclaiming your rhythm means planning space for the unexpected, not packing every minute, not overcommitting. It's not laziness, it's wisdom. A well-paced day is less vulnerable to collapse. And then there's the body. Microstress doesn't just live in your mind. It lives in your muscles, your breath, your posture. Clenched jaws, tight shoulders, shallow breathing. These are not random aches. They are messages. Your body speaks in tension, and microstress is often the language. The authors invite you to check in often, scan for signals, listen without judgment, release without apology. Your body isn't the enemy, it's your ally. And when you listen, it will guide you back to calm. It's important to remember, awareness isn't the end goal, it's the beginning. Once you see microstress clearly, you can start designing your life to support resilience. This doesn't mean avoiding all friction. It means building strength and flexibility in how you respond. You become less reactive, more intentional. You begin to shape your environment instead of being shaped by it. That's power. Quiet, steady, grounded power. The kind that doesn't scream for attention, but radiates through your presence.
There's a moment when you realize that most of your stress isn't caused by major life events. It's caused by small, silent frictions that happen repeatedly and without resolution. You begin to see that microstress doesn't just tax your energy, it shapes your identity. When you're under its constant influence, you start adapting in subtle but significant ways. You become more reactive. You avoid certain conversations. You hesitate to try something new. You lose pieces of your curiosity, your patience, your playfulness, all in the name of keeping things together. That's what makes microstress so dangerous. It doesn't break you in dramatic fashion. It slowly rewires who you are. The good news is that awareness of this effect opens a door to reclaiming not just your time and focus, but yourself. In this part of the book, we explore the hidden systems behind microstress. The authors point to an uncomfortable truth. Many of the stressors in our lives are not accidents. They are built into the systems we've accepted. The work culture that celebrates urgency, the expectations around constant availability, the idea that being busy equals being valuable. These aren't just external pressures, they've been internalized. And because of that, we often perpetuate the very systems that exhaust us. Reversing this requires courage, not necessarily dramatic action, but small, consistent resistance. Saying no more often, defining clearer boundaries, leaving space in your calendar, taking longer to reply to non-urgent messages. None of these will win applause, but they will win your life back, one decision at a time. The authors also introduced the concept of positive micro-moments, small actions that counterbalance microstress. A shared laugh, a moment of awe, a sincere thank you. These aren't solutions in the traditional sense. They don't fix the source of stress, but they change your relationship to it. They remind you that beauty and connection still exist even in hard seasons, that you are not just reacting, you are choosing. You start to understand that healing from microstress isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you were before the stress hardened you, before you started saying yes out of guilt, before you filled your days so tightly that there was no room to breathe. That version of you, open, curious, calm, is still there, just buried, just waiting for permission. And here's a surprising insight. You don't need to wait for your environment to change before you feel better. The authors emphasize that a shift in perspective often precedes a shift in reality. When you start seeing microstress for what it is, not personal failure, but predictable overload, you stop blaming yourself. You start designing your life around what nourishes you, not just what's expected of you. You don't escape microstress by outrunning it. You escape it by untangling from it, letting go of the belief that you must constantly hold everything together, trusting that if you take care of your internal world, the external one becomes easier to navigate. And as you begin to live this way, something changes. The world doesn't get quieter, but you do. And that's enough.
Imagine waking up one day and realizing you've been carrying weights you didn't even know were there. That's the final shift this book invites you to make. Not just to identify microstress, but to let it go. To see how it has shaped your thoughts, your habits, your relationships, and to gently begin the process of choosing a different way. Part 6 of the journey is about designing a life with fewer hidden drains and more quiet wins. The authors talk about purposeful subtraction. Not adding more self-care routines or productivity hacks, but removing the things that quietly erode your joy. The obligations that no longer serve you. The projects driven by fear of falling behind. The endless digital check-ins that feel urgent but are rarely important. And as you subtract, you begin to notice space. Not just in your calendar, but in your mind. Space to think, to feel, to remember what you actually care about. The antidote to microstress isn't doing more, it's remembering what matters. It's creating a rhythm that aligns with your values, not just your tasks. This part of the book also highlights the power of micro-connections. A quick message to someone you miss. A 2-minute moment of stillness before a meeting. A walk without your phone. These small acts don't look impressive from the outside, but they build inner resilience. They remind your nervous system that not every moment requires vigilance, that peace isn't earned, it's allowed. You may not be able to remove every source of stress from your life, but you can learn to move differently through it. You can be the kind of person who responds rather than reacts, who knows when to engage and when to release, who finds stillness in the chaos, not because life got easier, but because you got better at choosing what to carry. There's also a call here to reimagine success. Many of the micro-stresses we carry stem from unexamined definitions of what it means to be successful. Always available, always productive, always achieving. But what if success is something quieter? What if it's the ability to show up fully present, to move through a day without bitterness, to enjoy your own company? The final pages of the book don't offer a grand solution. They offer a mirror, an invitation to pause, to ask yourself not what should I do next, but what do I want less of? What do I want more of? And what would it feel like to live with intention now? Because in the end, the microstress effect isn't just a problem to solve, it's a signal, a reminder that something needs to change. Not all at once, not perfectly, but consistently and with compassion. As you take these steps, the noise doesn't vanish, but it fades into the background. And what remains is you, steady, centered, and awake to the life that was always waiting beneath the stress.